Welcome back to Luxury Cruising. I'm your host, Krystal Sodaitis, and I've got a really great treat for us today. I have Kevin with us, and Kevin is an expert in creating luxurious experiences, specifically around luxurious hotels, luxurious accommodations, luxury hospitality. And so I really wanted to dive in and talk to him about what creates that luxurious experience? So, Kevin, please tell the audience anything you want them to know about you.
Sure. Okay. Well, listen, it's great to be here. I'm talking to you from New York City, where it's very hot. It was very cold, and now it's very hot for this time of year. But we're getting by. And just a little bit about me. I am an architect by training and by profession. I have had the good fortune of being in charge and designing some very, let's say, major architectural projects, certainly in the city, also all over the world, which is one of the most rewarding things about my job is that I do travel a lot. And, sort of been on the cutting edge, I think, of designing cool buildings for the future, but you always with a kind of humanistic approach to it. But somewhere along the line, I also started doing a little developing here in New York City and learned a lot of lessons in this one project. But recently, I've started a new development company, and we focus on very private wilderness hotels and resorts. But at the same time, that privacy is based on intimate social experiences. So, yeah, this is kind of where we are, I think, right now in the luxury moment. I think it's all being sort of defined. And I think we now have the tools to better understand who our guests are. So, if we start from that sort of guest centric approach, a lot of the projects I've also been in retail, with very high end retailers. And hospitality has always been guest centric. Don't get me wrong. I just think that we have the ability now to fine tune our service to meet the expectations we believe our guests might have. They may or may not. People are fickle, but we want to be prepared for just about anything. So, that's why our focus is really at this point is just developing a group of people who are interested in this type of wilderness experience. It's not glamping. This is luxury wilderness. These would be fantastic hotels no matter where they're going to be. But they're really built in a way to take people to the edge safely and then use that experience to sort of set off a whole kind of regeneration of who they are. And so ideally, these become transformative experiences. And the reason we think we can do that is that the tools we have and what we're employing, the sort of cutting edge of technology, I think is going to be able to solve a lot of problems and at the same time sort of attract a specific group of people.
Love that. Well, I definitely want to get into the details of those specific hotels at some point. But before we get there, I want to ask you a question that I usually reserve for the end of the interview,
Sure.
but I think it goes well at the beginning for our talk today. And that is, how do you define luxury?
And you know what? I think that's a great way to start these kind of conversations because if you just have a feed like I do on LinkedIn, I'm sure just the algorithm is just every day is luxury. And I think it's a term that I think it's overused or misunderstood. I mean, for some people, it just means people who make a certain amount above a threshold. But it's more than that because it used to be people measured their luxury, I guess, in two things. I think it's always been about service. I mean, that's a sort of built-in expectation is that if I'm going to pay more, well, then I'm going to expect higher service. And I think that's as old as people have been gathering together. And some people are paying for services, other people are performing those services. I think it's now becoming less and less about things as much, or rather, if you have things, you have a certain kind of things, might be very fashion conscious or eco conscious, or there's something, but it tends to be understated. There's nobody wants, or, it's not an era, I think, where people are flaunting their wealth, but you also, it's an era where people are valuing experiences. and are willing to do things that maybe their parents would never have done, that somehow defines them as a kind of a generation seeking a little bit of adventure. And those are the people that we're most interested in talking to and canvassing. And because, again, the purpose of this is, yes, I'm a designer, I'm an architect, I've designed lots of very cool hotels and museums and skyscrapers and all this kind of stuff. And if you just Google my name, you'll find out all you want to know about me. But, I've always been very interested in how does architecture make people's lives better? If we can't answer that, then I'm not really sure, what we're doing. And in an age where increasingly we define ourselves by how much screen time we have, I think there is a conscious effort, and I see it, especially my kids who are both Zoomers, that they want to get away from that world. They understand that it's been somewhat of a toxic experience for many of them, and they self regulate by getting away and getting into the world and in ways that it's, I think, almost unique for a generation of Americans. I did that. I mean, I was fortunate. My parents traveled around when I was a kid, and I've got the travel bug ever since then. And I certainly had my great stays in amazing, hotels. But I think the point of it is that there's a kind of a yearning for authenticity, authentic experiences. And at the same time, there's a greater understanding of both the power and the fragility of nature. And sort of, if you can combine that, and also that once you start to really look at this as an enterprise, you realize that when you're talking about sort of wilderness experiences with a very high level of service, you're talking about, a significant amount of power, and you have to have water. And there's a lot of other things that go into it that are just fundamental. And on top of everything, then you layer onto this that we have, to some degree, a sustainability bias. It's our name is Beyond Zero, DDC. But I would say it's not so much sustainability; it's conservation first. We buy as large plots of land as we can, usually 2,000 acres and above. And the idea being is that we want to be able to put these in places when you look out of your room, you're not going to see another building or anything else. You're basically going to see almost pristine nature, ideally as pristine as possible. So again, there's a lot of practical challenges to doing that. But what's really cool about it is that we kind of treat these almost like living laboratories as well. So we can't do this without technology. And at the same time, we want to be partners with and support growing technology, and especially green technology, sustainable tech, property tech, what have you, anything that we can do so that the experience when you get there is not just simply you're out there in nature, but you have a series of really amazing, intimate social spaces and experiences that you can do while you're with us right
Yeah.
along.
So how do you do that? Because a lot of the people I interview, they feel it right away. When they walk onto either the main salon or to the initial deck of a cruise ship, they say immediately, some people describe it as walking into a lobby of a luxury hotel. Some people sort of like the service, the opulence, it's just a feeling that they have. And how do you identify a luxury hotel? These are intangible. So, what goes into the planning from your perspective that creates that space that ultimately infers this feeling of, oh, yeah, I'm here?
We've gone through a period, I would say, maybe the last couple decades when these things first started bubbling about with things like a category called eco resorts, right? And I would say 95% of eco resorts have this same sort of model. Let's call it architecture, built into it, which is that there's usually a main building of some kind where you eat, you maybe have a drink, maybe there's a bar and a lounge or something, entertainment area if it's for kids as well. And then you have everybody lives in sort of smaller little cabins that are kind of strewn about the landscape. And the problem with that is if these things are built in narrow lots, they tend to congregate everybody as closely as possible. Again, it depends a little bit on the ADR, the price point that you're sort of looking at. Or they string them out along like a string of beads, a pearl necklace, right? And the problem is if you're at the end of that string of beads and you get out of your bathtub and you need a hot towel, you're not going to wait 20 minutes for them to get there. The fundamental basis of all hospitality is service. It's built on service, and you can optimize service or you can get in its way. And having designed casinos in Vegas as part of even larger complexes of buildings and navigating all that, so that feeling that you're talking about often is a very human thing, where it's you connected with somebody. Maybe it was out in the porte cochere, you're dropping off your car, it was the valet, the porter, or the concierge, or whoever you met along that way. And sometimes it's just as simple as they know who you are, right? Oh, wow. And it's that
Just
little
knowing your
note,
name.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that people respond well when they feel like they're being seen. And for some people, travel is no big deal. I do it all the time. And then I'm really looking for all the things that you're going to do wrong. Or maybe this is something that they've saved their money up and this is really an important new thing for them, but they're feeling a little bit like, wow, I'm really punching above my weight, when I'm in here. Look, all these people seem to be smart. But those are just the best hotels don't exclude you. If you're there, you want to feel like you're there by invitation, not because you chose them, but because they chose you. It's like that's this sort of fundamental stuff about that. And you'd be surprised how much of that focus goes into the design of one of these. If you don't have that, of course, there's lots of other issues and problems and costs and things like that you have to do. But if you don't mind me for blathering on here for a
No, not
second,
at all, except
Krystal,
I do want you to explore a little bit more of what it means to
yeah,
design a hotel and the service to impart the feeling that they chose you. I mean, I love
yeah,
it and it
yeah,
resonated with me completely,
right,
but I was
right.
like, "Wow, how do you do that?"
Okay, so I would say getting back to cruising a little bit. Yeah, the model for this has always been yachts, let's face it. And what's interesting about yachts, where people are going, whether they own the yacht or they leased it or,
Charter or
you
whichever.
chartered it or whatever. Yeah, is that there are certain rules, in there. And the point here is that once you leave port, everything you need is going to be on that yacht. It should be, right? Otherwise, you got problems. And this is a little bit of what we're doing here. We're trying to design, in effect, a kind of land yacht, right? So that all of the needs of our guests can be met. So we understand, what those needs are before they get on board. It's not a completely far fetched metaphor for what we're doing. So I think that confidence of knowing that those things are going to be on board, those services or items, whatever that's going to be on board for people. And they don't have to worry about it. It's one less thing they've got to think about. Oh, I forgot my, you know, medication. Oh, don't worry. We got everything aboard. Your doctor signed off on this. We have all that, right? So the onboarding would be, I think, a little bit more intensive, but I think the payoff would be I'm willing to have a little bit more of a thorough understanding for it. And ultimately, we'll just get better at that. And this is something where I do think AI is going to be excellent at helping. It's not going to create the human touch. You have to have the right people there who can read people and understand their moods and know when they have to bother them and how they might have to bother them. There's lots and lots of cues in that.
Yeah,
But
hospitality is definitely not an enterprise that is gonna be taken by AI. I mean, it's just not,
no,
and
because
create that sort of human touch, that
yeah.
ability to impart that sensation, like, no, there's no AI in the world that's gonna be able to do that.
So the first answer to your question is, yeah, I do think that having that human connection right from the beginning. That's not what I do try to set that up, right? So that there are not just one human connection, there's three or four or five, right? And every step of the way. They know who you are. You welcome in. And if you're a return guest, they might even know what kind of drink you want, or, exactly. It's that sort of, wow, you guys really remembered. And so that never fails, I think. And especially if it's genuine, it doesn't feel robotic. And then there has to be something about the quality of the space itself. In this case, we're really trying to feature the landscape. I could say, well, on some level, the architecture really disappears, and that's one approach. But there's two ways to experience the wilderness, right? There's one way where the weather is beautiful, everything's perfect, and the butterflies are fluttering around. And then there's another way where actually it's harsh, right? And you want to have a place where when it's great, it all opens up and you can go out right outside. And when it's harsh, you can hunker down with your friends over a fire and do sort of those kinds of activities and feel safe, right? And you're safe because you're not out in your little house, wondering if it's going to free you, but you're all together, right?
Yeah.
You're together with like-minded people.
Yeah, and that does bring me to thinking about a cruise ship and especially, a luxury cruise ship that may be more open to the outside because we know one of the downsides to being on a very large ship is you're sort of in a floating mall. And even though this is changing, there's not a lot of
A floating
interaction
casino. What do you
with
mean? It's not
yeah,
a mall
like
casino.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like it is like Vegas in some ways.
It
You
is.
can be
They're all
completely
like Vegas.
self-sustained.
Yeah.
And so having that ability to experience the open water, experience nature, but then also knowing that when the weather gets bad, which inevitably on a ship it may happen,
Yeah.
then you feel safe and there's a beautiful interior experience
Yeah.
so that you don't feel like you're missing out in air
Right.
quotes because you're not outside.
That's what's interesting. Our idea is that what we want to do is we're trying to develop a kind of a prototype. The land yacht is a sort of prototype of a type of structure that can be built anywhere. It's a little bit of NASA almost, technology, so that we build these things very light footprint that hardly touch the ground, and everything else is wild around them. So the whole experience is going to be the sort of structure is built almost the same, but all the interiors are completely different. And we want to work with, local craftspeople and local designers. So it has a very much of a local flavor. So it could be the similar sort of setup in terms of how many rooms, how does it operate? It's a kind of a model of efficiency, but that's sort of then transported to it's on an ocean or a beach or it's in the mountains or the desert or whatever the geography is. I mean, there's other limitations to it, so I can't say categorically anywhere in the world, but sort of a little bit like that. And so that helps us too in terms of the development of this because we can bring some economies of scale, modular kind of components and buildings that we can just keep repeating and build these things anywhere in the world and have the same operating consistency, which is what people demand. There's certain things people want when they travel, and they have brand loyalty because that's developed because I always know that I've got a great level of service. And when I talk to people who stay in hotels a lot, that's the number one thing. When I was traveling a lot, the number one thing was, could I get to sleep and could I get a hot shower? As you kind of get older, you've got other criteria. So,
Yeah, there's more to it. So,
yeah.
are there any of these hotels that are built or they're still in development?
No, we're definitely in the development stage. And while we have our concept of the design pretty far along, and we are actively looking for land right now, mostly in the Southwest. But I'm interested in talking to people, especially if they have some experience in this area, whether they're just in the service hotel industry themselves and they've got some experience in that, or they're in development, or there are people who think this is kind of a cool thing and welcome being part of our group that we're going to sort of tailor this around. So it's almost think of it a little bit more like a club. And we're not really at the point where I'm going out to a big investment rounds that I'm okay on that score. It's just really am interested in just talking to people about their travel experiences. And if it sounds interesting to them, I'm happy to schedule a time to you know, get together on a call and tell you a little bit more about what we're doing, but also really, I think, to better understand if you could design your perfect hotel experience and then imagine it. Some people just don't like the idea of going out. They like going to places where they
Yeah.
can go to a city, and that's fine. Luxury means fits you like a glove, like a really well made glove. That's kind of what we're trying to do. And
I love that definition or that thought about luxury. It fits you like a well-made glove. That's
like a well made
a
glove. Yeah.
soft leather, well-made glove.
Yeah. Right. And you don't always need gloves, but I guess it's kind of an existential level thing. It's how you treat travel. I think for me, what's interesting about my experience of traveling over the years, and I was fortunate that I have parents who were very into travel and their enthusiasm was infectious. But I just felt like it always was a reset. Wherever I went, even if I'd gone to the same country or same place a gazillion times before, I always said, you know what, let's just go as if I've never been before. And that was always refreshing because it's good to learn new things and it's healthy for your soul and for your mental health. And I think for your spiritual well being is to have a better understanding that the earth is a small and fragile place, but also of immense power. And, so we all could use a little humility in our life
Absolutely.
and togetherness.
That sounds amazing. So, if somebody was interested in talking to you about this project, providing their view on travel, especially eco travel, sounds like luxury eco travel, how would they find you?
I'd say the easiest thing is on LinkedIn. You can just find me there. Unfortunately, to get to me on LinkedIn, you have to look at Paul Kevin Kennon. That's just my first name. And that's just in order that I can prove I am who I am. That's one. I mean, the other is you can just Google my name. I don't think there's not a lot of Kevin Kennons in the world. Excuse me. I'm not saying that to be snooty or anything. It's just that's is. And there are different links you can get to me that way. But like I said, I really am genuinely interested in, talking to people and hearing what are the key things that they look for when they travel, and especially if it's at the luxury end of
Yeah,
things.
excellent. Well, we will definitely put your LinkedIn in the show notes.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you coming and talking to us about sort of the thought process behind creating
Yeah.
luxury. I absolutely loved it. I hope the audience did too. And for all of you listening, thank you for joining us. And until next time, I wish you safe and luxurious cruising.